Every day, a large amount of goods are transported to and from the petroleum industry's installations on the Norwegian continental shelf. These goods fall into many different categories, from food and drink to hazardous chemicals and heavy drilling equipment. Common to all is that they must arrive at their destination undamaged. In addition, they must be packed and transported in such a way that guarantees everyone who comes into contact with the goods has a safe and secure workplace. So, what the goods are packed in and how they are secured in load carriers is crucial. This visualization will provide you with some basic guidelines to follow. We will focus on the following topics: inspecting load carriers, selecting load carriers, securing cargo in load carriers, external securing and labeling of load carriers. So, welcome to this visualization, and please pay close attention to the information about packing, securing and transporting cargo, as well as user inspection of load carriers. One condition for avoiding harm to personnel and equipment is that the load carrier must be in perfect condition. That's why we inspect load carriers every time we use them. We call this user inspection. In addition, we are going to take a look at yearly inspection. The owner of the load carrier is responsible for conducting a yearly inspection of the equipment. However, those renting or using the load carriers are responsible for sending them to the owner for inspection. This inspection is first and foremost related to the load carrier's overall technical condition and lifting properties. The yearly inspection is required in accordance with NORSOK R003 Appendix H. The standards for load carriers are described in DNV 2.71 and NS EN 12079 1, 2 and 3. Every load carrier must be labelled with a colour code, which indicates when it was last inspected. We use 4 colours: blue, red, yellow and green. Load carriers which were inspected and certified in 2008 have a blue label. For the coming years, we will use red, yellow and green, and then blue again, and so it continues. Just because a load carrier has been inspected and approved in the yearly inspection, it does not necessarily mean that everything is all right. At every stage in the transportation of load carriers, they are exposed to significant amounts of stress, which can cause damage. So, all load carriers must undergo a user inspection every time we use them. We must follow the OLF checklist, and all points must be checked off before the carrier can be sent on. You can easily find the certificate plate on the front of the load carrier. Check the certification date. Also, make sure that the ID number is readable, and remove old labels. Of course, it is crucial that the lifting set is in proper working order. During your visual inspection of the load carrier, you also have to check the label on the lifting set. Check for deformations on the chains, slings and shackles. Also check that there are cotter pins in all shackles and that they are split or bent. You perform the visual inspection of a load carrier as follows. Start by making sure that the lifting lugs are undamaged. Damage can cause extra wear on the shackles. Then, take a walk around the carrier and ensure that there are no changes to the primary structure and that nothing is missing. At the same time, check for holes in the carrier. For open load carriers, you have to make sure that drainage holes are not clogged. Be especially careful to check that doors and lock assemblies are working properly. This means inspecting the locking bar with grippers, hinges, seals, handle, locking lip and safety hook. Check that all movable parts of doors and attachment points are lubricated. There must not be any unsecured objects on, in, or under the load carrier. Remember that forgotten tools, gravel and pebbles quickly become potential falling objects when the carrier is lifted, so make sure that all unsecured objects are removed. The same goes for rust flakes. If you notice any rust flakes on the unit, don't use it. Rust flakes are a particular problem in forklift pockets and on the roof of the load carrier. If the carrier has defects or deficiencies that cannot be repaired on site, it must be marked with a label that indicates this and must not be used again before it is repaired. Repairs are the responsibility of the load carrier's owner. When it comes to user inspection of tanks, you also have to check that the valve outlet is fitted with blind plugs or covers and that they are fastened with safety chains. That the right datasheet has been placed in the holder on the tank. That the tank has valid IMO certification. The label on the tank looks like this. IMO certification is renewed every 2.5 years. That all hatches and valves are checked and sealed in accordance with OLF's guidelines. Every seal has a unique number. That all installed equipment, for example grids, plates, etc., are screwed firmly in place. In addition, check that the lifting set cannot get snagged, or is not already snagged, in connections, valves and the like. Inspect the tank visually for leaks. Drips or moisture on the ground and moisture on the tank are clear signs of a leak. Also, make sure that the manhole seal has been correctly installed. Sweaty gaskets also indicate leaks. The load carrier can only be packed when it has been inspected and found to be in order. When it has been packed and is ready to be lifted, pay attention to the lifting set. There must not be any twists. If there are any twists, they must be straightened out before lifting. But for now, the lift is still a little ways off. First, we have to pack the carrier. In this section, we're going to take a closer look at what kind of load carrier to select for different types of cargo. First and foremost, it is important to select a load carrier that is the most appropriate size and shape for the cargo. It should be easy to secure the load in the load carrier without much need for wedging. At the same time, it must be easy and safe for the receiver to unload the cargo. In addition, you also have to take into consideration the following when selecting a carrier. If the load is so heavy that the receiver can't unload it with a forklift, you must use an open carrier or a top-opening load carrier. If the top is removable, it must have certified lifting lugs. When using an open carrier, loads must not protrude beyond the carrier's internal dimensions, either length or width. Life rafts must always be transported to and from offshore installations in open carriers. If you are shipping gas cylinders, they must be transported in either a gas rack, a special container for gas transport, or lying down in an open load carrier. Cylinders containing acetylene and propane must remain standing in a vertical position during transport. In such cases, the walls of the open carrier must be higher than the cylinders. Flammable gases and gases which encourage combustion must be loaded separately in different load carriers. Two components, A and B, paint, adhesives, etc., must be transported in two separate load carriers. Provisions must be packed in their own load carriers. When you have selected the correct type of carrier, and it has been inspected and judged to be in order, it is time for loading. You always have to keep in mind that the cargo must be packed and secured for the entire transport, through the logistics chain all the way to the final recipient. You also have to consider the conditions under which the load carrier will be unloaded. As previously mentioned, it must be both easy and safe for the receiver to unload the cargo. At the same time, The load must be secured to withstand the stresses it may be subject to during transport. We have a lot of equipment available for securing cargo. If you use this equipment correctly, the cargo, equipment and personnel will all make it through transport unscathed. Now, let's take a look at the following topics related to securing. Securing equipment to pallet, packing equipment, placement of cargo in a container, securing cargo in a container, as well as securing cargo in baskets. Let's start with an overview of the equipment we have available for securing cargo. First and foremost, we use jack straps to secure the load. Jack straps are available with various tensile strengths. You can easily get an idea of the tensile strength of a jack strap by counting the number of strips running lengthwise in the strap. Each strip represents a tensile strength of 1 ton. The exact tensile strength is printed on the label. Generally, we recommend that you use jack straps with a tensile strength of at least 5 tons when securing cargo in load carriers. To avoid wear and tear on the straps, it is important to protect them from sharp edges. Use suitable materials to protect the straps. Rags, cardboard corners and rubber mats should always be available. You can also use other soft materials. Be aware that particularly sharp edges can easily cut through soft materials. To prevent the cargo from shifting from side to side, we normally wedge it in. To wedge in cargo, we mainly use pallets, airbags, solid wood, and anything else that is well suited to the cargo you are packing. Bedding must be placed in the bottom of a basket and cover its whole width. A barrier net must also be installed to prevent unsecured loads from falling out of a carrier with doors. We will look more closely at how to use this equipment later on, but first it is important to point out one absolute requirement. Cargo must never be placed directly on the floor in a carrier. Equipment must be placed on and secured to pallets before loading it onto containers and forklift transport. You can also use a trolley or basket if it is appropriate for the cargo. If you choose to use a basket, you must make sure that it has legs or forklift pockets so it can be loaded and unloaded with a forklift. When transporting gas cylinders, the specific regulations we discussed earlier apply. When using a gas rack, the size of the rack must be appropriate for the size of the cylinders. When the cargo is placed on a pallet, trolley or basket, it should be easy to load it into the container. It is easiest if you plan how you're going to pack the container in advance. The following points will ensure good and effective securing. Position the cargo as far in and as far out to the sides of the container as possible. If you are using a container with an internal deck, place the lightest cargo up top. Secure each pallet, trolley or basket individually. Remember to engage the wheel brakes on trolleys. Secure the cargo between each time you load new cargo. Secure each object with at least 2 jack straps. The cargo should be pressed down and out towards the sides by fastening the jack straps like this. It is extremely important to protect the jack straps from sharp corners, so use the protective material that is best suited to the cargo you're working with. Sometimes we have to use wedging materials to secure the cargo in the carrier. The type of wedging materials you choose depends on the space you need to fill. Even though the cargo can seem to be thoroughly secured, you can't take it for granted that it will look just as good when the cargo arrives at its final destination. So, as an extra barrier against harm to those receiving the cargo, we use a barrier net. Remember that the barrier net must never be your primary securing method. The tensioners on the net must be attached behind the door, which is shut first. Before we close the doors and send off the cargo, let's take a look at how to secure cargo in baskets. Cargo must never be placed directly on the floor of the carrier. In baskets, we place bedding under the cargo. When exceptionally making use of pallets, keep in mind that a point load can destroy a pallet at weights well below the pallet's maximum capacity. Pallets can only be used if the load is suitable for palletization. A basket must be loaded according to the length of the cargo. If the cargo is shorter than the basket, it must be centered and wedged in, so that it is ready for both transport and lifting operations. In any case, the cargo and basket should be approximately the same length. The kind of bedding you place in the bottom of the basket depends on the cargo. As a general rule, tubulars should be laid in shaped bedding, tailored to the dimensions of the tubulars. When using shaped bedding, the cargo should be secured by pressing it down towards the bedding. You do this by fitting a jackstrap directly over the cargo, the shortest distance from A to B, like this. If shaped bedding is not available, you must use flat bedding. Then the load must be secured by U-lashing. You perform U-lashing like this. All cargo pace on flat bedding should be secured in this manner. A maximum of 2 tubulars can be secured in shaped bedding. If you are loading several tubulars, they must be grouped in odd-numbered bundles placed on flat bedding and then secured by U-lashing. Now the cargo has been optimally placed and secured in their respective load carriers. All that is left before the cargo can be sent off is to ensure that the carriers are closed and secured and that possible falling objects are removed. So, securing container doors, requirements for labelling containers, securing baskets, and requirements for labelling baskets will be the main topics of this sequence. Container doors must be closed in a specific order, so that the door that is closed last also secures the other door. Make sure that the grippers on the locking bars interlock both at the top and bottom. Press the door handles in all the way and lower them into the latch underneath. Then lower the locking lip down over the handle. Lock the handle and the locking lips together with the safety hook hanging on the door. The container must also be sealed with OLF seal. Each seal has a unique number. Most new containers have special holes for the seal. If there is no hole for the seal, put it in the same hole as the safety hook. Make sure that the entire seal remains intact. Don't clip off the end of the strip when the seal has been fastened. It is important that the container ends up where it is supposed to, so make sure you fasten a label with the correct destination on the door handles with steel wire. The checklist and destination are often on opposite sides of the same label. Check off all the points on the checklist and sign it. After you have actually checked everything, of course. If the container contains dangerous goods, you also need to attach the correct IMDG and ADR labels. Basket tops must be covered. This prevents lifting equipment from getting stuck in the cargo. To cover baskets, we use the fitted tarpaulin that comes with the basket. The tarpaulin should be see-through and allow water to pass through it. If using the tarpaulin proves unworkable, you must implement other measures to prevent lifting equipment from catching on the cargo. Just like containers, a basket must be labelled with its destination and checklist, as well as labels for dangerous goods if necessary. When transporting a container by lorry, it must be correctly fastened to the lorry. Most trailers have standard container locks for 20 and 40-foot containers. If that is not an option, the container must be fastened using chain tighteners that are intertwined like this. We have waved goodbye to the cargo, and now it is on its way to its final destination. A satisfied receiver, who unloads the carrier without problems and finds the cargo intact, must be our goal. Our most important means for achieving this goal are: position the cargo as far in and as far out to the sides of the container as possible. Use at least 2 jack straps to secure the cargo down and out towards the sides of the container. Tubulars in baskets shall be centered. When using shaped bedding in baskets, jack straps should be stretched between the shortest distance from A to B. You must always use U-lashing using flat bedding. Make sure you always keep these things in mind when you load a carrier. If you follow these rules in your daily work in the future, then we have achieved our goal with this film. Thank you for your attention, and remember, all cargo must be easy and safe for the receiver to unload.